just to say a sentence or two on my background. Alexandra introduced me and told that I'm right now teaching at the University of Vienna and senior researcher at the Institute of International Affairs. I used to play basketball and I dreamt that I would be an NBA player, so I miserably failed. So this is why I'm here talking about solidarity now. But no, without that joke. I was born in Bosnia and Herzegovina, not in Austria. I lived in Bosnia until the beginning of the war, which started in 1992 and ended in 1995. I was forced to leave my country as a refugee at the beginning of 1993. And as the fate wanted it to happen, I ended up in Austria. I didn't know the country, I didn't know the people, I didn't know the language. And in the meantime, and over the times and years, it became a second home. But what actually marked my life tremendously, and what was the biggest milestone so far, of course, that was the war. And the war is until today something that I refer to when I just try to imagine my life, my past, my present, my future, when I think about my kids, when I think about the shape of the world. And I come back to my war because in the meantime, I learned to embrace the feelings. Otherwise, I would not be able to function and to survive. But what I learned that somewhere deep inside there is a big, not to say traumata, it's probably the traumata, but it's a kind of a big question mark asking a very simple question. Why is one human able to do something very evil to another one? And at the same time, I dedicated almost my whole life to ask to find the answer to the opposite question of the evil one, and find the answer to the question of how and under which circumstances do we need to be good to do and exercise good. And looking back now at the last few years, an event that re-traumatized me in a way, because I learned in Austria that, I came here, I was accepted, I came in a wonderful class. I just recently published a book on that. This wonderful class in the high school accepted me, saw me as a human being, and I started, playing basketball. So I felt secure, and I even have forgotten in the meantime the feeling of being desperate about the evil side of the humankind. And then when the Russian aggression on the Ukraine started in February 2022, I remember not sleeping for weeks. And I remember my kids, I have two small girls, 7 and 11, asking me and my wife, what is going on? And what is happening? Why are we crying? Why are we sitting here? Why we are not sleeping? Why we are desperate? And even until today, the smaller one keeps asking at least once per week, Daddy, Mommy, is the war in Ukraine still going on? Is it going to be fine? Are we safe in Austria? It's not going to happen here. It's not going to happen here. That's what she keeps repeating. Of course, the deep trauma that they tends to come back, but then there is a set of questions that all of us probably ask ourselves. And one of the questions related to the war and related to the present that we live in is the question about how to find strength, how to find motivation, resilience, how to find energy to fight against the evil, to withstand this kind of a bad, evil side of the life. And last few days, just to come back to my first point, last few days, I've been intensively following and being in touch with my colleagues and friends or the young people from Serbia. In Serbia right now, following a tragic event of a collapse of a rooftop in the railway station in Novi Sad, where 15 people were killed, a huge wave of protests emerged. And until today, young people and many students and universities joined the protests are taking it to the street, to stand up, to show courage, and to fight for what they think is good against corruption, against nepotism, clientelism, authoritarianism of the regime of Alexander Vučić. And I don't need to tell you, and I think there are colleagues also from Georgia, hopefully, I don't need to tell you and to remind us all what is happening on the streets of Georgia, what has been happening the last few years. People, young people, showing up in front of the police, being subject to violence, but withstanding, fighting. And that brings me to the question: why do they do it? They do it because they feel that something is going wrong. They feel that they are subject of repression. They feel that the spaces for participation, deliberation, for freedom are shrinking, being limited. So they stand up and fight for something. And that brings me to one conceptual and actually major argument of my small input today. It might be that some of you have read work of Jan Potočka, a famous Czech philosopher. And he introduced, in one of his pieces, he introduced the term solidarity of the shaken. And I'm just quoting one piece from that writing. He said, while usual solidarity is based on common grounds, the solidarity of the shaken stems from the experience of the complete loss of ground and its essential groundlessness caused by frontline experience. So when you are exposed to a moment where you lose ground, where you feel this kind of existential threat to what you are, to your freedom, to be as the person, the human being that you want to be, and accepted and seen by the others, this is the moment where you are shaken. And he speaks about the solidarity of the shaken, a new term. And I think this solidarity of the shaken right now in 2024, against the background of the war in Ukraine, against the background of the rise of far-right extremism, against the background of the horrible climate change effects that are going to hit us, against the background of unpredictability and uncertainty of our time. I mean, we are looking to the inauguration of a poor liar and populist politician in the United States of America. So we don't know what the next day is going to bring. So basically, my argument is that on a global scale, and also partly in Europe or significantly in Europe, we are facing, or democratic or liberal society are facing a truly dangerous type of new animal. And this new animal, you can describe it as illiberal democracy, you can describe it as new authoritarianism, you can call it far-right populist, you can call it phantom democracy, however you call it, but this new animal on the other side, a dangerous one, and I don't need to tell you the names of those guys that are actually standing for that animal. These regimes reduce spaces of participation. They try to seduce people to disinformation, to propaganda. They spread lies. They want to base politics and decision making on post-truth, on beyond. They move beyond the facts. They are ready to use violence, as we see in Georgia. They are ready to be repressive as they go about. And they are ready right now in 2024, and this is why I think this is a dramatic moment. They are ready to build up something that I called authoritarian international. So they are connecting each other to each other. Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban just the other day visited Trump in Florida. Vučić, president of Serbia, is a dear friend of Orban. Orban just the other day or the other week had an intensive conversation with Vladimir Putin, etc., etc. And you see, and I mean, in our country, in my country today, Austria, we have a far-right party, extreme party, Freedom Party, which won the election and which is also part of this kind of a wider network. We are facing the elections in Germany on 23rd of February. The Alternative for Germany, which is a deeply xenophobic, racist party, is probably going to win at least 20%. So we see a new shaking horizon. And now comes the question, and I'll try to make my few final points. as his first input. Here, my argument is that many people today in Eastern and Southeastern Europe globally feel excluded, feel under pressure by this new type of the animal. People like people in Georgia or young people in Serbia on the streets, or civil society activists in Hungary or in Slovakia, they are the shaken of today. So they are those that are vulnerable, that are marginalized, that are whose freedom is actually taken away from these new types of regime. And to tell, I mean, they are standing up, as I outlined at the beginning, some of them in Serbia, in Georgia. There are networks of solidarity. And the question is, what should be the direction of their work, and what type of solidarity network should they build up in order to withstand this behemoth on the other side? I think one of the first avenues to work on is actually to produce and to keep producing fact. We can't withstand the authoritarian post-truth politics without insisting on fact, without promoting fact and fighting for something which is then free public. Secondly, I think all those people in those networks need to stand or go back to norms and values of liberal, human rights-based, fundamental rights-based societies, the equality, the freedom, which sometimes is even forgotten by the European Union when it acts in a transactional way towards, I don't know, Vucic when the lithium is needed, or towards Orban when a compromise on the budget is needed, etc., etc. This kind of a cynicism that you also have on the side sometimes of the European Union needs to be overcome by refocusing on norms and values. And those people in those networks, they need all possible support, and they need a long breath in times of uncertainty. And what is mostly needed, and this should be a kind of a fundament of the solidarity of the shaken, is to work towards or against the invisibility of those that are shaken, of those that are marginalized. And here there is a wonderful small booklet that might inspire some of you by Pierre Rosanvallon. He's a French philosopher. He wrote a small booklet on with the title Parliament of the Invisible, actually telling that in times that we live in, many people are made invisible, are marginalized, are oppressed, and that the political participation in the political realm has been reduced to those that are able to be part of this, be competitive. Speaking about the competitiveness in the last webinar that you have, to be competitive, to be able to withstand all the pressure, but many are not, and we have seen a lot of it in the Corona crisis, but we see it also today. So I think we need more of those kind of examples, and just as an act of inspiration and to try to end up on that note. 2 weeks ago, I went to Brussels with a group of activists from Serbia and from Bosnia, fighting against the mining project and for the clean environment. And there was one of she's also my friend, Leila Kusturica from Bosnia and Herzegovina. She's leading the organization called or named ACT. This organization, a bunch of young people, very well connected to all other organizations in the Western Balkans, etc., etc. They have managed in Bosnia and Herzegovina through these acts of solidarity, through the solidarity of the shaken, because they are those that are shaken, that are confronted with flat lawsuits, etc., etc. They've managed to stop, for example, destruction of the river Una in the western part of Bosnia, where some investors from I think Austria and Germany wanted to erect some mini hydropower plants to ruin actually this kind of environment. They have managed to support the friends in Serbia that are standing up against the Vucic regime and against the mining project. So they have managed to set up something that I really deeply admire, is a network or a series of workshops where they come together and work on the mental health of the activists that are put under pressure, that are having burnout, etc., etc. And by the daily work that they do, by the emotions that they display, they just feel this solidarity of the shaken, this notion that I introduced with life. They are tender, they are constructive, they are courageous, and they are powerful. And this is what I precisely mean with the solidarity of the shaken that is very much and so much needed today. Thank you so much.
I will give you a little bit of information about my background so that you will understand why I choose to focus on European solidarity. So first, I worked on a thesis for 4 years, so at the Sorbonne University in Paris, on the concept of solidarity applied to the European Union. So I was in political philosophy. And so I decided that I would go into a more contemporary issue and not reflect on historic of philosophy as it's been done a lot. And I actually was very inspired by Pierre Rosanvallon that you quoted earlier, because he and not just him, but those contemporary philosophers, they really want to grasp concepts and to apply them to our current situation to make us understand what we are living, what we are going through, and how to overcome some obstacles, political obstacles, primarily that we face. And so I decided to focus on the concept of solidarity because I was questioned by an event that occurred in 2015 when I was trying to start my research. And that event was the migration crisis that Europe faced in 2015. And it was very interesting to me because I would hear good things about it, bad things about it, criticism about European action, about the government's actions. And I was hearing the word solidarity everywhere from everybody. And at some point, I stopped in my reflection and I wondered, what does that mean? Why do everybody speak about solidarity, but I cannot find one single definition on what solidarity is? Or when I ask people who talk about solidarity in that context, they never agree on a definition of solidarity. And so it questioned me. And I thought that it would be a good object of a philosophical research for me. So at first it was just like an interrogation that I had on the definition of solidarity. And then I wondered, what will be my field of study? What will be the geographical aspect of solidarity that I want to reflect on? So first I thought, what about transnational solidarity? And then I came into a few difficulties because reflecting on solidarity without borders, without geographical limits, was a challenge. There were many examples on the NGO side, on like transnational activism, but as political solidarity, I couldn't find many good examples of that solidarity. So then I decided that I needed borders to border that solidarity and to focus on a geographical space. And then I chose the European Union. Why? Because in 2015, when I started my study, the European Union was under so much criticism that I thought that it'd be interesting on a philosophical point of view to reflect on that European Union history and to see if the solidarity among the member states was something real, something imagined, was a desire, but nothing really concrete. What was it behind the European solidarity, behind the European project? And then it started to me. It really started because I read a lot. I had many interviews with people that were making the European Union, so political actors, administrators, also think tankers, of course, academics of all kinds from all over Europe. And it was even more, let's say, disappointing to me, because there was still not one definition of what solidarity meant for the European Union or in the European Union context. As I reflected on it, I realized that as solidarity was a cornerstone of European integration, there were also many interpretations of what solidarity was, or could be, or could mean to people, or to governments, or to member states. And when you asked people from Germany what European solidarity meant to them, you had a very different answer than when you asked French people, or Greek, or Italian, or Polish people. And it really interested me in the first place, because when you don't have the same definition of a word that you use every single day, that's when it leads to misunderstandings, to disappointment, and somehow to resentment. And I think the European history is really a history of missed opportunities on solidarity and miscomprehension on the project. So that doesn't help you much, of course. But I did came along a definition of solidarity after 4 years of research. But before I give you that definition, let me maybe reflect a little more on the history, the historical role of solidarity. So historically, solidarity has driven European integration, from the post-war reconstruction to the development of a unified market and response mechanisms for global crisis. And when you look at the past 15 years, which are 15 years of crisis, like over and over again, when we think we're over with one, there is another one starting. We started with the Greek crisis in 2012, so the economic crisis of the Eurozone. And that's when the first real misinterpretation of the word solidarity came across my research, because you had two different visions of what European solidarity could mean. So when Greece was facing this huge economic crisis, I put it very simply, but they said, well, first, it is your fault, because you were not responsible in the way you were managing your economy. Second, we all contribute to the European solidarity, and so we demand to get something back from that solidarity we share with you. So if we are to help you, Greece, we want something back in return. We want you to be more responsible, we want you to reform, and we want you to pay us back. So that was the northern vision of solidarity at the time. And the southern vision of solidarity, which was shared by France, Italy, Spain, and other countries, was a bit different. Of course, there needs to be reciprocity to the solidarity that we're engaged in. But it doesn't have to be direct reciprocity. So yes, we want to get something back, but it can be in the very long term. Getting something back can also be just to save the Eurozone as a whole. And that can actually be sufficient for us. So it's long-term vision, whereas in the northern vision of solidarity, it will be more of a short-term vision. And this misinterpretation of solidarity, of the definition of solidarity, you can take many other examples of European history, the migration crisis, the Brexit, COVID, of course, and now Ukraine, and you find the same difficulties on defining solidarity. So how do we get along? Is there a good definition on solidarity? There can be one. But if solidarity is defined as a goal, then you can never agree on solidarity. You will always find ways to disagree, to say we give that much and we want that much back, or something like that. So the biggest mistake of the European integration is in 1992, with the Maastricht Treaty, when we decided that the European integration, and so the process of solidarization of the member states, would become a goal in itself. That's when we lost the sense of what solidarity means. Solidarity had to be a tool, an instrument for the European project. And that European project had a goal at the time, and it's the same goal today: protection. Protection of our economies, protection of our citizens, protection of our values, of our social models, of our political models, our liberties, our freedoms that we care so much about and that are so special in the world, as Mr. Dzihic just said. It's so very rare in history and in the world today to share those common values on freedom, freedom of speech, freedom of movement, and so on, that we need to protect them. And European solidarity is a mean to protect those values and this model. So we need, I think, to redefine solidarity not as a goal, but as a mean, and to see it as the human body. I think the only definition of solidarity that we can all agree on is the organic solidarity. When you look at the human body and the organs, if one starts to stop functioning, the other ones will fail. Well, it's the same to me in the European Union context. If one member state fails, the other ones will follow, because we are so interdependent. We are actually so in solidarity among one another, whether it be good or not. It's kind of neutral, actually, but whether we want it or not, our destinies depend on one another, especially because of all the reasons Vedran just talked about. So let's look at solidarity as organic system of the European Union. Let's make it more, let's say, concrete by setting goals, by setting objectives that we can all reach. And the objective can be to just make that human body survive, which is make the European Union and its values survives, everything that we share. So when I said the European Union, of course, for my research, I only focused on the borders of the 27, 28, and not 27 member states. But the idea is, of course, to include in that thought all the countries, all the regions of the world, and especially Europe and Mediterranean, that share the same values that we share and that are at war right now, like Ukraine, that are in real danger, like Moldova, and that need our support, that need our solidarity in order to protect, not to protect solidarity, but to protect our ways of lives, our values, and our freedoms. Thank you.